The world's biggest social network is back online after an outage that lasted several hours. Facebook, WhatsApp and Instagram crashed last night, with millions of users unable to send or receive messages or refresh news feeds. Well, joining me now is Andrew Sachs. He's the head of research and analysis at ETX Capital. Good to talk to you today. So what do we understand about how this may have been caused?
Well, it's quite interesting, isn't it, that a major supplier of media and collector of data would actually have all of its outlets and all of its channels go down for 7 or 8 hours in one go. The question I think that has to be asked is, what are they, if you look at their actual official response, the Facebook company and its affiliates such as Instagram and WhatsApp, their official response was that it was down to a router, someone who's configuring routers that transfers data between all of its servers. But it's very interesting to notice why all of those companies are reliant on one network of servers. I mean, that is really very, surely there should be a segregated set of data centers, so that in a case of disaster like that, then there would be other areas of the company that would still be live.
We're looking at these images, of course, that they've embraced the phrase hacker with their road signage in the area. I mean, are we confident that it wasn't a hacking?
Well, it's very early to say yet, and I don't think they're going to tell us that right now. If you look at the news yesterday, when it first came up, nobody actually published it, and certainly Facebook didn't do so. It was first noticed on Down Detector, which is a sort of a free website for anyone to access to see whether any service in the world is up and running or down. It was noticed there first, and it took a long time before Facebook actually came up with an official answer that it actually is down. So they won't necessarily admit that until they've done extensive research into exactly what the cause of it was. It looks quite simple. I don't think it's a hacking situation, although that wouldn't necessarily be ruled out. It looks quite simple, more likely to be that whichever department was doing that particular upgrade, server upgrade and network upgrade, has caused the outage. But the fact that it affected the entire company, WhatsApp, Instagram and Facebook, for such a long period of time, cost the company over $100 million and cost Mark Zuckerberg himself over $6 billion, is something they should really be asking themselves.
No, it's extraordinary, isn't it? Extraordinary sums. Because I suppose a lot of people will think, well, you know, what is the problem if I wasn't able to scroll through Instagram for a few hours? Why is it such a massive financial hit when this happens?
Well, I think there's more to it than we can see on the mainstream media. If you look at the mainstream media, it's really just showing that a major social media platform was down, and therefore everyone suddenly took to Twitter. And if you look at Twitter's share price today, it's actually down compared to yesterday, because investors are not going to necessarily look at the sudden move towards Twitter, because it wasn't a sudden move towards Twitter because of Twitter's prowess. It was because companies and any entities that want to use or need to use social media had to go to a different platform because they couldn't propagate their marketing material or their product ranges and so forth that they would normally use other social media channels for, or even their way of contacting them, other than go to a different network. So it wasn't necessarily Twitter didn't gain from this, or other social networks didn't gain from this. But what is really interesting, and I've done some research on this morning, is that it isn't just a social media issue. It's actually a corporate issue too. It's quite interesting that some government departments and embassies and so forth base their entire computer system on Facebook servers. So if you go into an embassy and you go into a national government office, their computers were down and they are still down this morning, because they are reliant on Facebook and WhatsApp and the actual Facebook group of companies for accessing their data. And let's not forget, Facebook is a data company. The company harvests data from everybody from around the world and has a huge amount of personal and corporate data. So the damage done is not necessarily just that you can't contact people from social media. It's actually a compromise of access to data.
But having said all of that and saying, you know, that the Twitter wouldn't necessarily benefit, it will have led people in frustration to go to other social media places, won't it? So their competitors will have probably had a bit of a boost, won't they?
Yes, they did, and they got a numbers boost. And if you look, they will now all be looking at their Google Analytics and say, "Oh, look, there's a spike in our users." But the actual value of those companies, from most of them are publicly listed, Twitter and so forth, they haven't gone up in value because it's a spike because of an outage. So what may happen is it would only go up in value if there is enough unconfidence, lack of confidence in the stability of Facebook's disaster recovery systems. And having worked in financial technology for 30 years and actually being involved in development teams that actually program bank servers and do network development for financial institutions, there's always a segregated disaster recovery section. So if something goes down, you switch it over to a fully replicated, very similar system to the live production server, which is a simulation that keeps it going. So they clearly didn't have that in place because this router upgrade took down the entire company for 7 hours. So the only thing that might affect it and cause its competitors to go up in value is if there is enough lack of confidence that this particular system that Facebook's topography is built on isn't robust enough and can cause the entire company further outages and therefore compromise its data and also cause its advertisers and people who use its social media to look somewhere else.
And we know that over the weekend there were some leaked documents. I mean, is there any theories about whether or not this is linked to what happened, or is it just a coincidence?
I think at this stage there's not. It's very close to, happened very close to the time that the outage occurred. But I think there are two different subjects. They will have to be subject to an internal investigation. But as it stands, it looks to be an error on the part of a network team, which deployed a router upgrade, which was not able to convey data between different server farms and different data centers. So I think the question that should be asked is not necessarily whether that was to do with it, more the internal development team and server development team are actually able to segregate or test their router deployment before putting it onto a live production server that replicates across the entire company's network.
Oh, interesting stuff. Andrew Sachs, thank you very much.
Thank you.